Good evening and welcome to Chasing the Facts. I'm Sam Chase, your host, and with us this evening is candidate for Chelmsford Select Board, Erin Drew. Welcome to the show, Erin.
Thank you, Sam.
No, you're very welcome and pleased to have you on. And just for the benefit of our viewers, we have a municipal election which will occur in April of this year. Every year we have a municipal election. And this year we have one select person seat that is up for election. The way it works is it's a 2-2-1 cycle. So first year, 2 people run for 2 seats. Second year, 2 people run for 2 seats. And the third year, it's a 1-seat election, 5 select board members. So this particular year, the incumbent decided he would seek re-election. So here we are with an incumbent seeking re-election and 3 challenges. Erin is one of 3. So Erin, again, we're very happy to have you with the show. And what we usually do, or I should say we always do with the guest, is we ask you to give us a little bit of biographical information, maybe 1 or 2 minutes, and then we'll get into the discussion. So we turn it over to you for that.
Thank you. So I'm Erin Drew, as you know. I live in Chelmsford with my husband and my 3 children. I have 3 little girls. They're 7- and 5-year-old twins. They're at center school. And I am pretty active in the community, I think, between the kids and their sports and my involvement with various mothers clubs and things like that. And then I am also a town meeting rep, and I'm a zoning board of appeals member for just over 4 years now.
And that actually is very good experience to prepare you for an eventual spot on the select board. And I can't resist. I mean, it's your interview, but I'm going to say this anyway. Getting to know Erin, turns out she and I share actually a common professional background.
Yes.
You know, we're both in the field of logistics. You were more on the logistics distribution side. I was more on the finance side.
So on the trade compliance
trade
side,
compliance.
really. Trade compliance, which
Correct.
is the regulatory side.
Regulatory side, export, import administration, customs, and you are a licensed customs broker.
Yes.
Which I can tell you is not an easy thing.
No, it's like a 10 to 20% pass rate for that.
Very difficult exam
Yes.
that you have to pass for that. So I find that to be a very interesting background and actually one that prepares you very well for many challenges.
Yeah.
So first question that we ask any candidate is, why are you running and why are you running now?
Okay, so, and this is a question that everyone asks. And right off the top of my head, I always want to say, well, why not, right? But, the truth is that it's a lot of work. The job, all of the municipal jobs are a lot of work. This job in particular is a little bit more work. And this campaign is a lot of work. As enjoyable as it is to sit here and have conversations with you, it is a tough couple of months coming up to election. You're taking on a lot. And, that's something that I think everyone considers coming into this, what their personal life is like and what they have going on aside. But, you have
to have the backing of your family. Or
yes, yes. My husband has to be willing to understand that I'm going to be out more at night for meetings and things like that. So that's a factor. But, I've been involved for years now. I've been on the ZBA. I've been watching what goes on in the different town offices. I've been following. And, once you kind of get involved, you are involved to some extent. And then it's just a matter of how involved you want to be. And, I've made a lot of friends in town between my colleagues, and a lot of them have expressed support for me to move on and to do something else in town. And, at this point, I think that I have the kind of the support and the experience to do something bigger on a bigger board with more responsibility. And I think that Chelmsford could use more options. I think that a lot of the people in our town government have been in our town government for a long time. I think that we could use more people running all the time. So again, why not? Everybody should run. I think everybody who has an interest and who enjoys the type of work that we do in the municipal boards and committees should get as involved as they want to or as they can. And I'm at a point where I'm looking to do that. So, and I think that I have skills that I can offer the town and that they deserve to have options. running in their elections.
I like your answer because in the municipal elections, and it isn't just Chelmsford, it's many of the towns, you have a very poor voter turnout at a municipal-only election. So it's generally somewhere between 9 and on the high side 12 or even maybe 13% at the high side, which is really abysmal when you think about it. And many times, a lot of these important positions like select board, like school committee, like planning board, for example, they go uncontested.
Yeah.
And that is not a good thing. Even if the incumbent is the best thing since sliced bread, it still isn't a good thing. You want, as you say, the choices. You want to have options and choices. So I like, that's a very good answer, you know. And obviously, because you are running, and again, you're running against one incumbent who's been there now for about 6 years. So you must have some ideas as to what you might try to do maybe a little bit differently, or maybe try to shift the focus on the board. Do you have any thoughts in that area should you be elected to the position?
Yeah, so, you know, I think, as I mentioned, I think I have kind of a fresh perspective, and this is something that I talked about last year as well. Having not been in town for a very long time, we've been in town for almost 6 years now. I feel like I come in with a different perspective. You know, I've lived in small towns and big cities and all kinds of places in the past, so I feel like I have a good, fresh perspective and a broad perspective from my history. I also think that having young children in town and in the school system and involved in sports and involved in a lot of the family activities makes me kind of a different option. It makes me a little bit different than a lot of the board members and gives me a different perspective that way. And, you know, in regard to my experience, I think that, you know, coming in, running against an incumbent is difficult, right? Because they've been on the select board. I can't compete with that. I haven't been on the select board, but I have been involved in our municipal government for over 4 years now. And I think that is valuable. And frankly, that's more experience than some of our select board members sitting there had when they ran for office.
That is very true.
Yes, it's more than some of them had when they ran for select board and started in that job. And also specifically, my experience on the zoning board, I think, will be particularly helpful because development is something that I think Chelmsford is struggling with a little bit at the moment. It's a challenge for us. So I think that having that zoning experience will be beneficial to the select board as a board.
Oh, it's certainly all absolutely relevant experience. And you know, the other thing is, and again, nothing against the incumbent who is running, but quite frankly, there are a lot of people in town who feel that 2 terms might be enough, okay, or that they just want, as you say, to make a change to get the different perspective and the new ideas or whatever that is coming into the board. So I know the town that I grew up in, it was an unwritten rule that you didn't do more than 2 terms.
Really?
Yeah, and if you were select board, school committee, planning board, nobody ever did more than 2 terms. Now, you know, some people say that's a bad thing, but other people say that's a good thing. So,
I don't know that I
don't agree.
love that idea across the board, because I do think that there's a lot to be said for people that have been doing this for years and years, that the experience is wonderful. But on boards where you have, you know, 5 or 7 people,
Right.
I do think that it's nice to have a combination of people who have been around for 30 years and know the history,
Exactly.
and people who don't.
No, I
aren't.
don't. I don't subscribe to the theory that you should have to get out after. I mean, after all, the voters get to make that choice, especially in a contested election. But I'm just saying there are people who do feel that way. So you know.
But it's also nice to see
Right.
people go from different boards, because then they
Yes.
get the different experiences
Absolutely.
in the town, and
Absolutely.
that's helpful, especially coming into something like a select board where you're kind of an oversight.
And that
of all of
was
those other
until,
boards.
I would say, within the last 8 or 9 years, that seemed to be the traditional path that most people took. You'd start off as a town meeting rep, and then maybe you'd serve on one of the other boards, and then maybe you would make the jump to select board. I can remember when I first came to town, we had I can't not remember the gentleman's name. He had been in town for less than 6 months, and he ran for school committee right out of the box. Now, certainly, there's nothing wrong with that. You can certainly do that. But people were saying, well, wait a minute. This guy probably is still trying to figure out how to get from point A to point B in Chelmsford. He's only been here 6 months, and he's running for the school committee, and he did not, a very nice gentleman, very educated and knowledgeable, but he did not do very well. And I thought, well, that's probably because you've only been here 6 months. So, yeah, I think it's apropos. So, do you have anything particular in mind? And I hate to use the word agenda because that's kind of a bad word in politics. People who have agendas. But certainly you must have some idea of a vision you would like to try to project or work on.
Initiatives?
Thank you.
Maybe, yeah.
That's a much better word. Initiative that you would like to promote when you get on the board.
I do. I have a few things. So, one thing that I feel is lacking is kind of a sense of unity. And that's something that I think is very important in the select board in particular, as I look at them as a leadership board for the rest of the boards in town. So, I think that we need to have a good sense of teamwork on the select board, but we also need to have unity with our liaisons, with our liaison boards in town and our town boards and committees, and with our state reps, and with our community. And I think that increasing avenues of communication between those groups is important. So that's something that I kind of have in mind to try and foster. I also have kind of some proactive measures in mind in regard to protecting some of our assets here in town. Open space is something that I have a personal love of. One of the things I really love about Chelmsford is all of the wooded areas, the trails that we have. I've been bringing my kids through Thanksgiving Forest, since they were 2, and that's something that I really want to protect. I really want to work on protecting as a town, and in a proactive manner, whether it's looking at zoning or conservation areas, whatever way we can do that. And another thing that I really have in mind is how we want to make progress in town. So at the last select board meeting, actually, they had some conversation about a strategic plan and growth strategy that they are rolling out. And I think that is really amazing. And I was actually very surprised to see that coming out of the board, and happy to see that coming out of the board, because that's something that I think very much needs to kind of be laid out, a 5 or a 10-year plan to see what their priorities are and how they plan to tackle them. So that's
yes, I believe
they're
starting with a template from Shrewsbury, I believe it was.
Yes.
Yeah, which I found to be very
Shrewsbury,
interesting. And I did after hearing about that, I did some research, and I find that most towns don't have that.
Yep.
And so this may be something that more and more towns will be getting into in the future. So.
Yeah, I think that would be.
Maybe we're on the cutting edge.
Yeah.
So that's something that, you get on the board.
And as a board, I think that's important for the community to see too. I can't tell you how many people I've said that I'm running for select board, and they've looked at me and said, well, what does the select board do?
Oh,
they don't.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yes, they have no idea, and they know what the planning board does. I mean, to some extent, and they know to some extent what each of the committees do, but even people who are fairly well involved in town really don't know what the board does outside of kind of rubber stamping licenses, So I think it would be very beneficial from a leadership perspective for the board to really lay that out for people in town to understand.
If you follow a strict construction of the way the town charter is worded, that is exactly what the board is supposed to do. When I explain it to people, I say the Chelmsford Board, don't make that mistake, the Chelmsford Select Board, I'm 76, I'm trying, folks. I really am, okay? The Chelmsford Select Board is really equivalent to a corporate board of directors.
Yes.
Okay, and the town manager is the equivalent of a CEO, okay, and that's the relationship. And the board is supposed to do policy initiatives. and they're supposed to set the strategy, if you will, of going forth. So a 5-year plan or strategy, whatever you want to call that, it seems to me would be one of the first things that the board would try to tackle. So you look at all the towns around us and you say, wow, they don't have this.
Yeah.
And yet, shouldn't that be the primary focus of a select board?
Well, and to say they're a policy-making board is, you're defining it, but what does that mean in reality? What do they actually do on a daily basis? What are their goals? What are their, what are their strategies? So when you say policy-making, I want to know, well, how are they targeting what policies need to be made? How are they creating those policies? And how are they going to implement those policies and oversee them to make sure that they're being implemented in the manner that they were intended?
Right.
So that's, when you dig down a little deeper into that policy-making board definition, I think that's kind of what needs to be defined a little bit more.
Right. So, and that's, I think that's entirely appropriate, and what that tells me is that you've read the charter and you understand it, which I think is very important.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people haven't read the charter, and there are some who've read it and don't understand it, and there are others who've read it and don't want to understand it. So, we have a mixed bag, which happens in any town. It's a political situation, and people make of it what they want.
Yeah.
So that's good. So I think you have given us a little bit of a flavor, but maybe I would ask you to expand a little bit. One of the questions is your leadership style. So now you're elected to the board, and you are a town leader, one of 5, okay? And you look at the current board. So how would you assess your leadership style? Erin gets on the board. What are we going to see maybe that's a little bit different from what we're seeing now?
So I would say I have a pretty direct style. I like to solve problems. I like to tackle things and get them kind of off the table. I don't like a lot of drama. I like to really just get into it and get it done and get it off the table. I like to prioritize agendas so that we know, what we need to get through first. And yeah, I don't like things to linger, for years. And I think in municipal government, particularly, things tend to do that. As
my friend John McDonough says, things move at the speed of government.
Yes, yes. And I would like our government to move a little bit, not necessarily quicker. Not quicker is not always better, but effectively, And I think that prioritizing your agenda and just getting things done when they need to just get done is important. So
that's good. Do you think the board meets often enough, or do they meet too often, or do you have any idea about their work schedule?
I think that they meet often enough. I know, sometimes, they meet, right? So from what I understand, at certain times of the year, they meet much more often than at other times of the year. So, but their standard, 2 meetings a month, I think is enough. And then they have their liaisons, right? Their liaison boards that they're supposed to keep up on. And the combination of all of that, I plan to be at a meeting of some sort, probably 2 to 3 nights a week. And I think that is enough. I think that the liaison meetings,
and I think that's accurate,
are very important. Yeah,
I think that's accurate.
Something maybe a little more around spring and fall meeting time, a little less in the summer and the winter.
You're elected to the board. You get your liaison assignments, and not all of them require participation in all of the meetings. Again, it depends on the board, and then the chair will allow you to some discretion in that regard.
Yes.
But generally, what they will expect is, especially if you're a liaison to a major board, they will expect you to report at a board meeting. Okay, this is, if something significant comes up, this is what they're talking about, this is the direction they think they're going in. The joke is that nobody wants to be the school liaison, okay, because that is a very intense assignment, okay? But, and again, I'm not trying to plant any suggestions in your brain here, but since you have that experience, because you are involved in the schools and PTOs and everything, that might be something that you should you be elected, would be interested in
And I
doing.
think that would be an appropriate
Yeah,
role.
and it would be, and generally speaking, that's what the chair tries to do, tries to match the person's desires and experience with the particular liaison assignment. I mean, that's what we did when I was on the board, and I've watched the board very carefully since then, and I see that pattern. This is generally what they try to do.
Yeah.
Give you the assignment that makes sense for you,
Yeah.
to have. Because
Well, and it makes sense to have your board members attending meetings that they have a vested
correct,
interest in,
yeah.
and that they may already know something about also. And
So, yeah, the thing that I like about what you're saying now is what you're indicating is that you have an understanding of what the workload's going to be.
Yes.
And I've seen cases in the past where people are elected to the board and they're just overwhelmed because they
Yeah.
had no idea that they were supposed to be doing this, and this. And it is, I say it's the school committee and the select board, are both really working boards. You
Yeah.
really are supposed to roll up your sleeves and pitch in and get the job done. And you have that understanding, which is good. So.
yeah. Well, in the select board, and as a leadership board, as a policy-making board, I also feel like, somebody told me once it's good to know a lot about a little and a little about a lot. And that's kind of what I feel like the select board members should do through their liaison committees. Like, we're not subject matter experts, on trees.
Right.
Or on diversity and inclusion, or on the schools even. The
Right.
school committee are the experts in there, the diversity and inclusion committee are the experts there. But we have those boards to draw from as resources, and we have them to also collaborate with, I think. So, I think knowing a little bit from each of those boards is what we're designed to do as our liaison boards. And that's, yeah.
I think that's a very good perspective. Now, given the current situation in the town, what do you think are the most pressing, well, maybe it's just one for you, or maybe there's a couple, but the most pressing issues, immediate issues facing the town that you think we need to move on?
So I definitely think we could use some proactive movement. Development is huge for me personally. I think development is probably the biggest issue that we have. I understand that we are lacking affordable housing. There's a lot of pressure from 40B, from MBTA, but we also have senior housing that we are in dire need of. I remember speaking with the housing authority last year and them giving me the numbers. The numbers currently of how many people are on the wait list for senior housing and the projected numbers, and it's huge. So I think that when we talk about
people want to stay in town.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
So I think about when we talk about development of real estate, I do think that we could use a little bit of a refocus on senior housing, and development in general. Just is everywhere. It trickles down into every piece of our infrastructure. It trickles down into our schools. It trickles down into our sewer system, which is another major thing that I think we should really kind of try and tackle. And then, it trickles down into everything. It trickles down into our finances, which are another major problem. With inflation, I think that lowering our costs in town and increasing our income are going to be increasingly important over the next, handful of years. It's going to be difficult. So those are things that are kind of on my radar.
That's good. We've had almost now for the last 17 years, we've had a town manager who's been with us, Paul Cohen, and he's weathered several storms, obviously. How do you see the relationship between the board and the current town manager? Any thoughts on that? And any thoughts on the town manager's overall performance, either generally or on specific issues?
I think generally, I think that he does a good job. I mean, I think financially we're in a good spot. Our bond rating is great. I think that we have a really strong team working for the town. The employees seem to like Mr. Cohen as a town manager. He seems to have a good relationship with them.
And he does hire the department.
And he hires them,
right.
yeah. I think we've hired, I mean, our recent DPW director hire seems wonderful. I think we've done a really good job with staffing. He's done a very good job with
Yes.
staffing in the town, and I think that the relationship between him and those people is strong, which is important. Overall, I think he's done a great job. I do see some stress with him and the board. I see some personality conflict maybe, or and honestly, I don't know. This question has come up for years, how you feel about the town manager. I think that's going to happen. Sometimes there's going to be conflict, and I think that's probably good, really, in municipal government for there to be.
Well, you love your husband, but do you always agree with him?
No.
No, I mean,
No, sir, I do not.
But people laugh at that, but really,
Yes.
that's what we're talking
Yes.
about. Okay, I mean, any relationship, I don't care
Yes.
what it is, whether it's personal or professional,
Yes.
you're never going to agree on
Yes.
everything. And the trick is, when you get to those situations, to try to manage it in a manner that is constructive and fair to both parties.
Yes.
Okay, and I think that ought to be the objective of any select person.
Yes.
To do that and to make a fair evaluation. So, and again, you're not on the board now.
And I'm not on the board.
You're-
And there are things that happen that I'm not
Of
privy
course,
to in
of
executive
course.
session and whatnot, so I don't
course.
assume to know, how I
Right.
feel really until I'm in there. But
So that is a very fair answer, and you're going to get this question. I'm prepping you for the CBA debate. Split tax rate.
split tax rate.
And we've got about 3 minutes, and I want to leave a little bit of time for you at the end to ask for the vote, so go.
Okay, so split tax rate. So generally, I am in favor of a flat tax. I think that it incentivizes businesses. It gives us a little more leverage as far as bringing people into town. And at the end of the day, I think it's just fair. I think that the impact that the split tax has on small businesses in particular is very large compared to the impact that it has on our residential taxpayers. Having said that, I do have some interest in exploring some sort of compromise where you have a split, but then you have exemptions for residential taxpayers who also own businesses in town, small businesses in town. And that's something that I think should kind of be explored also. Just an interesting compromise maybe between the two. So.
Okay, that's good, and you will absolutely get that question at a CBA debate. It may even be the first question because
Yeah.
they're very interested in that.
I have a feeling they might get the same answer from everyone, but
Yes, and of course,
which will be interesting. It's a different year, yeah.
Well, I mean, you incorporated in your answer is the impact issue, which is why the state made a provision for a small commercial exemption. That's why we have that, because they understand that particular situation falls very, very heavily on what I like to call the mom and pop businesses.
Yes.
I mean, UPS could probably care less.
Yeah.
Okay.
But a restaurant that makes $100,000 a year, an extra
Correct.
$5,000 a year is a big deal.
It is
for
a
them.
very
Big deal.
It is a very big deal.
Big
to them,
deal.
and that has to be considered.
Yeah.
So, okay, so any thoughts on your campaign? Just very, very quickly. How's it going? Are you encouraged when you talk to people?
It's going. Talking to people is probably the most encouraging part of the campaign. No offense, this is the hardest part of the campaign, but not you in particular, but television.
Am I a
is
tough interviewer?
difficult.
Oh, I don't.
But talking to people in general is definitely very encouraging, and it keeps me moving forward in the campaign. So
That's good. And the more people you can talk to, better off you are, better off the town is for your candidacy.
yeah, fingers crossed.
So I'm going to give you about 40 seconds and have you, as Dennis Reddy used to say, look into the camera and ask for the vote. Go.
So I'm Erin Drew. I'm running for Select Board, and I respectfully ask for your vote on April 4th, Tuesday. Thank you.
That is one of the shortest ask for the vote speeches I think I've ever seen, but that is...
We talked about a lot of things. I think it's all out
yes,
there.
I think it's entirely adequate. So the message is vote. Please vote. And Erin, thank you for appearing.